We have seen how we can prove satisfiability of or unsatisfiability of conjunction of literals in the theory of EOF. The question remains is our method complete? The completeness means that no matter what conjunctions of literals we provide, it is going to provide a set answer yes or no. Why we may be worried about that our method is not complete? Let's look at an example. You have this equality x is equal to y equals to z, and then these two terms are not equal. How do we go about showing that this formula is unsatisfiable? It's fairly straightforward to see that since you have x is equal to y, you can derive f of x comma u equals to f of y comma u. Similarly, we can derive from y equals to z that f of y comma u equals to f of z comma u. Now we can apply transitivity on these two equalities we got, and we can derive f of x comma u equals to f of z comma u. We know that they are disequal because of the third literal of the input formula, so we can derive false from just applying the contradiction. So you can notice that in this process I created a term called f of y comma u. This term was not available in the input formula, so therefore the derivation went through a term that was not in the input formula. However, if you look at our algorithm, it generates only those terms using congruence that are appearing in the formula. So how can it be possible that our method is incomplete? In the following, we will prove a theorem that says that if such a proof exists, there exists another proof that only uses the term appearing in the formula. Therefore, our method is complete. So let's see what the formal statement is. That let's suppose you have L1 to Ln, a set of literals, and you push them into our increment your solver. We find a conflict if and only if the sigma is unset. So how do we go about proving it? See, first thing is that every step our algorithm does, each equivalence it finds is direct consequence of our axioms. So all the steps are sound. So therefore, then if our method does not find the conflict, then sigma is certainly unsat. So it is certainly sat. On the other hand, if sigma is unsat and there is a proof for it, we want to show that we are going to find unsatisfiability in our method. Since increment UF applies congruence only if the resulting terms appear in sigma, we show that there is a proof that contains only such terms. So we know that a proof exists. Our method only want to use a proof that only refers to the terms within the sigma. So we will transform this proof into another proof that uses the terms appearing only in sigma. So the first thing is to notice about the nature of disequality. So what happens is that there is some disequality s not equal to t in your input formula, and there's some chain of equalities that trigger that violation, that the chain of equalities may want s equals to t, and here we don't want s equals to t. So therefore you have a contradiction. So any disequality is encoded in the bunch of equalities. These are like positive constraints and one disequality. So you, in any contradiction, will not have two disequality playing a role, only one disequality is sufficient. So let's suppose this is the set of equalities and one disequality causing the unsatisfiability. Consider the proof that derives s equals to t. At some point of time you will derive s equals to t, and then there is s not equals to t, and then you say, wow, I have a contradiction. So we must have a proof step such that you have a sequence of equalities which are, you apply transitivity on them, and then you derive s equals to t. It may be noticed that I am saying n greater than or equal to 2. There may be not be the case that you may have the situation that you have a congruence applied on something, and then you learn this kind of thing, and then you obtain this equality. So it may be the case that you don't apply any chain of transitivity. Maybe this only one of them is there. One more point to notice is that S and T both occur in sigma prime. Okay, sigma prime. So S and T occurs inside. Therefore, these terms are there. We know them. Without loss of generality, we assume that Ui equals to Ui plus 1. Either occurs in sigma prime or derived from congruence. So one observation is that if this thing is derived from congruence, then the top symbols are same in Ui and Ui plus 1. That's what happens when you do congruence. Now we show that we can transform the proof via induction over height of congruence proof steps, such that only relevant terms appear in my proof. So if S and T occurs in sigma prime, any proof in S equals to T can be turned into a proof that contains only the terms from sigma prime. So that's the thing we are trying to prove. So base case, no congruence is used in derivation of S equals to T. Only you have a transitivity. Transitivity does not invent any new term. Therefore, there is no way you can invent a new term and irrelevant terms appear in the proof. Okay, so induction step, we need not to worry about Ui plus Ui plus 1 that are coming from sigma prime. Only when we need to worry about it if they are coming from congruence. Only this in the sub chain of equalities due to the congruences may have new terms. Okay, so let's unpack this sentence by example. So this is the thing which has been derived, and you have a chain of equalities, right? And in this chain of equalities, you can see that there's a term here, and there's a term here which occur in the input formula. But however, this term did not occur. This chain of equalities which are derived from congruence may have the intermediate terms that are not appearing in your input formula, and we need to somehow get rid of them. Let's suppose you have a j-1 log sequence of chain of equalities, and each one of them derived by some by congruence on the same function symbol f, all the way from j equals to 1 to j-1. Now what do? You have this kind of equality shown is that u11 equals to u21 and uj-1 equals to uj1. So in this case, what will happen is that this term, the final two n terms must be belong to sigma prime. Okay, why that is the case? Either this is falling in the very end. If that is the case, then S I know is also sigma prime, so that it must occur. Otherwise, this must be another equality, right? So, and since these two equalities are not used via congruence, otherwise, if they are done via congruence, they have a same f symbol, and the maximality requirement will put this guy inside the list. So therefore, that cannot happen. So therefore, this guy is not derived via congruence. And we have seen that if it is not congruence, that it is coming from the input formula. If it's coming from the input formula, then this guy occurs in my sigma prime. Okay, so having said that, now let's look at the pattern here. So you have a one equality here, and then the whole chain of equality of the which are connecting the green objects, right? So why don't we just first apply this chain of equality first and then apply the congruence? So let's see, how do we do that? How do we do the transformation? We do first apply all the transitivities to obtain u11 equals to uj1. Similarly, you do for the last parameter also. So you derive u1k equals to ujk. Now after this derivation via transitivity, we apply the congruence. Now this ensures that the intermediate terms which may not have occurred in my input formula are gone, and noticeably these guys have one step smaller derivations, and those by induction hypothesis we can say that these equalities have only terms that are coming from input formula. In this example, you can see that I have early application of congruence was the problem. We apply the congruence and then we apply transitivity, and therefore we had the problem. Now we will do that. We first apply the transitivity and derive x is equal to z, then we derive congruence, and then all the terms are from within the your input formula. So therefore we can conclude that our method is complete.